Today we're going to look specifically chest, back, shoulder areas. Basically the chest and shoulder muscles are going to move your scapula, your shoulder blade. So I can bring things forward, which is going to bring my shoulder forward. If my muscle's on my back, it's going to pull the scapula back further. Major muscles that you will need to know: trapezius for sure, pectoralis minor, serratus anterior. Your levitator and your rhomboids we'll talk about, but I probably won't have you label those. Probably not on the test. Reason being, we have superficial muscles and we have deep muscles. So superficial are on the outside. So trapezius, large back muscle, deltoid, shoulder muscle, latissimus dorsi, large back muscle. These are superior, these lay on the top. This side has your deep muscles, so these have been removed, and then I can see my levitator scapulae. It's going to levitate, it's going to lift the scapula up. Supraspinatus is in the top part above the spine of the scapula. Infraspinatus, teres minor, teres major, and then your rhomboid is probably the largest deep muscle. For labeling purposes, your superficial muscles are the ones that you will need to know for sure. And on your test, I will have diagrams that are highlighted for you to label. So now we're looking at the front side. I can kind of see where the trapezius is coming up from the back. Sternocleidomastoid, we looked at that the other day. So here again, external or superficial muscle. Pectoralis major is your main chest muscles, and if I think about how they work, they are going to pull. So when you do any weightlifting exercises or anything that brings your shoulder and arms forward, you're using your pectoralis major muscles. Here again, deep muscles. If I had you label any of those, it would be the pectoralis minor, which is a smaller muscle that sits right underneath the pectoralis major. Your intercostals are in between your ribs, and then serratus, basically kind of like a serrated knife. That's kind of where the term comes from, the way that it goes in between each of your ribs. Muscles of your abs, you do need to know. So linea alba is just a line of connective tissue. It's not actually a muscle. It's a line that runs right down the middle. And then there is a sheath, a covering that covers your abs. And then we have outside external obliques. Obliques are going to run sideways, so that's going to be more of a twisting motion. If I remove my external obliques, I'm going to find my internal obliques that also run sideways, and then my transverse abdominis. So all of my twisting sideways muscles: external oblique, internal oblique, transverse abdominis. And then what lays over the top center would be my rectus abdominis, and that's the muscle that gives you your six-pack, which everybody has a six-pack because that is the shape of the rectus abdominis. Whether yours shows up or not is a different story, but everybody has that. And we talked a little bit in class when we started dissecting our cats. Because there's so many layers of muscles in your ab area, there's also spaces for fat to accumulate between those layers. So your abdominal area, there are lots of muscle layers, but it's also an area where fat can accumulate fairly easily. Table for review: trapezius, the most important one on that table. If I start looking at the shoulder and arm a little bit more, muscles that are going to connect your arm to your pectoral girdle, ribs, vertebral column. Obviously, in order for my arm to move, a lot of my origins are going to be in the shoulder area and then pull my arm a certain direction. So flexors that bring the arm forward, coracobrachialis and your pectoralis major. Extensors, teres major and specifically latissimus dorsi. Abductors, supraspinatus and deltoid. And rotators, subscapularis, infraspinatus, and teres minor. So flex means to bring forward. So this would be flexing my arms. I'm bringing them closer together. Pectoralis major, very important for that. Extensors are going to pull my arms backwards, and your latissimus dorsi along your back is very important for that. Ab means away, so adductor, bringing your arm up away from the body. The deltoid is probably one of the most important ones there. And then rotating, you're going to look at smaller muscles that do more of the rotation. Rotator's cuff, rotating of the shoulder might have issues in that area. So here, deltoid, big, large, triangular muscle up in the shoulder area. Deltoid, you talk about this in the weightlifting room quite a bit. So deltoid, I'm guessing you've possibly heard of before. And then some of these smaller muscles are going to be important in your rotating. Here would be a picture of muscles that you need to know. Trapezius, deltoid, biceps. Those three for sure you would know, should know. And then the brachialis, brachio means arm, and that brachialis sits right underneath of your biceps. Another table, good review. Obviously I'm not going to read through all of these, but it's a good place to look to study for your test. Here, pectoralis major is a big one, latissimus dorsi is a big one, deltoid's a big one. I would say those three are the most important on that table. Forearm. So these muscles are going to originate on the humerus, and then they're going to connect to the ulna or radius because I'm moving my forearm part. So flexors that bring my arm forward would be my biceps. They're going to be muscles that are on the front of my arm if they're flexing. So biceps, brachialis, and brachioradialis are the three main ones. Extending, my main muscle is my triceps that's going to pull down and extend the arm. And then rotators, supinator, pronator, and then there's two pronator muscles. So here, looking at these, this will be memorization. And on the cats, when we label these, there's certain muscles that we'll look for first, and then we go from there. So biceps, that's the top one. Brachialis right underneath. Brachioradialis is a large, you can see that one typically in the front of your arm. It's on your thumb side, and it runs right along the top here. So brachioradialis, notice, comes from way up in the top, extends a large distance, and it's a fairly wide muscle. Then, if I go from there, the other larger muscle would be flexor carpi radialis. So radialis means that it's going to be on the thumb side. That's an easy way to remember it. And then I have flexor carpi ulnaris that's going to be over further. That's going to be on the ulnar side. So flexor carpi, they're going to flex my wrist. They're going to pull it up. I'm going to have one flexor that goes on my radialis side, one flexor that goes on my ulnar side. And then right in between that, I have my palmaris longus. So those are some of your forearm muscles. That is a good slide to study. Other than the supinator and the pronator, everything else on that slide, I would expect you to know. Looking at the other side now of the arm, I've got my triceps. So this is kind of a twisted arm. Here's the triceps. This would be your elbow, your olecranon process. So here, if I'm looking towards the top, so this is going to pull up, it's going to extend my hand. If everything here contracts, it's going to be pulling up. The other side flexed this way. So now, again, I'm going to have a flexor ulnaris. That's one that we looked at already. And then right next to that is my extensor ulnaris. So here again on the ulnar side, pinky side. Extensor digitorum is probably the largest, longest muscle that's going to run down the middle. And then I have extensor carpi radialis. And radialis brevis means that it's a shorter muscle. So I have a flexor carpi ulnaris. I have an extensor carpi ulnaris. I have extensor carpi radialis longus, which this would run longer, and that's probably one that you would see more commonly, excuse me, on a picture. This table, I would say 3 at the bottom are not as important as the ones at the top. So 1, 2, 3, 4, those 4 definitely on my good list of ones to know. Looking at specifically at the hand, flexors, here again, some of my radialis ulnaris. These are very common to your forearm as well as your extensors. So basically, these muscles are going to move your hand and your forearm. Pictures are very similar, if not identical. I'm not going to point through them all again. Here's the same one as before. So 4 identical pictures. What I want you to know out of this is that these forearm muscles are important for flexing the wrist, flexing the hand, and movement and twisting of your forearm. And there's the last table. I will tell you what I probably won't have. Probably won't have profundus. And that might be it. Extensor digitorum, maybe not. Your flexors, definitely. Palmaris, definitely. Extensors, definitely. So a good table to study before the test. And that's where we'll stop for today.